That was awesome. I don't know that we need to talk. Um, yeah, I think this is a testament to the power of art. And if you have an idea and you're an artist or a creator of any type, which we all are, and you want to do something like Margie texted me, she's like, "Can I do a cranky show?" And I'm like, "I don't know what that is, but it sounds awesome." So yes. Um, yeah. Yes. Awesome. So, Jess and I are going to talk for a little bit, and then we'll take another little break, and then we'll have the fashion show, and that will be it for our morning portion. Um, Sometimes people ask us what we're interested in, and we say we work with textile supply chains. And that is not interesting at all um, to most people. Some people in this room, actually, it probably really is. But that's not really what you want to say at like a party when you want to keep the conversation going. Um, But sometimes we find more interesting ways of saying it, and folks ask a little bit more questions. So, like, can focusing on textiles and fiber, can that really move the needle on climate change? Is it even possible to fill the gaps of an industry at scale with what it actually costs? And probably the most popular question, which is, what about those who can't afford, like boutique soil to soil type wardrobes? How could that actually be accessible for people? All of these questions, super solid questions, and they're great questions. And our answers, probably like many of yours, often change based on a number of things. Audience interests. So like maybe if it's somebody who's particularly interested in the fashion world, we'll say, do you like fashion? Or if it's somebody who is interested in personal health, we'll say, do you like well-being? Do you like personal health? We can take it from that angle. Um, the news cycle, personal mood, all of these things can affect how we answer it. And when we start discussing these questions, we often hear ourselves explaining things that for some people make their eyes glaze over, but it's so hard to give a real direct answer because we start talking about overlapping ecosystems and storytelling and cycles and interdependence and participation and poetry and art. And sometimes the answer ends with possibilities in new economics or shifts in consumerism. Sometimes we'll drone on about mycelium. Sometimes it's the cosmos. I mean, it's like everything, right? So I hope you're still with me. But what we feel like our answer is turning into over time is this. Why textiles? Well, textiles teaches us about love, and more on that in a few minutes. But it makes it a little tough to get grants because people don't always fund love. Um, and it's not quantifiable necessarily. It's not measurable necessarily. We can have larger conversations about that. Um, but a lot of our culture that we're living in right now is based on outdated economic systems where the exchange isn't what we would call, reciprocal. And years ago, we were having a conversation with Amy Eddings, who is a reporter from IdeaStream, about alpacas. And she called me. She was interested in the story of alpacas after her and Jess went toward an alpaca farm. She wanted a little bit more answers, and she was asking, what's the state of alpacas here? Ohio has more registered alpacas than any other state. So the Rust Belt, out of all the fiber sheds, has more alpacas than any other fiber shed. It's such an asset. And people in our fiber shed, because there's not much to do with it, we're missing part of that gap that was spoken to this morning. Literally line the street with trash bags full of alpaca fiber. And so we were trying to think about, how do we divert it? We were talking on the phone. She's doing all this research. She was looking at the math. She compared it to the demand and the processing. We kept explaining that maybe there's a way that this can work. We went back and forth with questions and answers. I was talking about dyes. I was saying how alpacas come in so many different shades, and she very pointedly asked me, she said, so you have to change culture, is what she said. Yes, the answer is yes. In so many ways, we are in need of a major cultural shift. We can kind of look around and we can see that the norm systems aren't necessarily working. Like, why is it so hard to get funding for a mill? Why are so many farmers working second jobs? Why are Americans landfilling millions of tons of fiber per year, as you heard from Nathan? Maybe because much of what isn't working within our domestic culture is sort of like a flickering candle. We have little hits of life here and there, but in working with such a linear system with values hinged on taking as much as possible for the self without a balanced care for the other parts of the system, it becomes an empty experience. Because, the question for many funders, again, we're going to talk about funding here, is what is the financial value in the Rust Belt Fibershed? And what they mean by that is how many jobs, what does the workforce development pipeline look like, the carbon sequestration methods, like these are very important things. This is the world that we live in. It is important to have these qualities. We need measurements. We need research being done. They are one way that we are grounded in our reality and that we can move forward in creating a tangible infrastructure moving forward. And we're trying to reimagine, maybe more accurately, remember from an ancestral perspective, what does it feel like to be part of an ecosystem, a felt part of an ecosystem? What is the value in doing all of this? Like, what's it for? Maybe even more importantly, are all these things really the root cause? All of these actions, incredible farming, carbon farming plants that are being made, the mending, the shopping local, the hand knitting, the swapping, the collaborating, all of these things that we might say are cultural actions of our fiber shed. Why is there value in them when you really get down to it? Why? We all know that it partially can be, but it isn't all about money. Economic gain is really important. It's the system that we live in. It improves lives. It's very helpful. It changes people's lives. Monetary exchanges are one way that this thing works. But why are we doing this? Why are you here? Why are we building mills? Why are we farming? Why are we designing clothing? Why are we mending, dyeing? Why are we sharing things? Could it potentially be because it makes you feel alive? Could it actually be that this is what we want with this life, to feel more alive, to feel enlivened by the things that we're drawn towards? All of us here are here because we're drawn towards textiles in some way or another. There are so many entry points into the system, an ecosystem, like I said. You like well-being, you like fashion, you like soil, you like compost, there's all these different entry points because it's an ecosystem that functions together. And you here today, you're here because of your own personal interest and your excitement and your feeling that you have about this topic. In some way, the topic enlivens you. And this textile ecosystem overlaps our broader culture in and of itself. And it can also be looked at as an example of how we can approach our participation in other systems and our relationships with the materials within that system. So let's revisit the Rust Belt Fibershed mission and vision. The Rust Belt Fibershed is catalyzing a bioregional circular textile ecosystem that shifts us toward a culture of care for people and for planet. This essentially means the what we are doing is building something, a textile culture, because the culture is the thing that will ultimately empower all the facets of the Fibershed, the technical and the soft infrastructure. The technical, concrete, cultural infrastructure includes our farms, our mills, our studios, our galleries, our storefronts. But this physical framework needs something more to truly thrive. It needs nourishment. It needs nourishment through our soft infrastructure, the knowledge sharing, the local support, the community programs, the workshops that breathe life into these spaces. While these two types of infrastructure often intertwine, it's the soft infrastructure that makes our whole culture feel enlivened by these tangible spaces that we create. Sometimes we avoid buzzwords like green economy that can sort of create a distinction between human and nature. We know there is no distinction. We are nature. It's oversimplified and encourages us to think about how we can take action to help fight climate change. These are all well-intentioned phrases and great, but I wonder sometimes, we wonder, if it is a limiting paradigm to think within. It actually increases the tension and the objectification of anything that is non-human. And instead of thinking of humans as verbs bopping around, interconnected to each other beings, our size, a cosmos perspective, and a micro perspective, it's actually pretty empowering when we think of things like that. In a world where ChatGPT can think for us and where scarcity of knowledge is slowly fading from the massive part of the economy, especially what we call like white collar jobs, there is a space for humans to become even more human. I'm going to have Jess finish it off. There. Where did you leave off? Where is it? How are you flipping? That part that says Jess. Oh, you flipped it. Okay. Oh, I flipped. She flipped it on me. All right. So, how might we be able to picture an enlivened textile culture? How can we use textiles to see the world all around us as a living system, not a mechanistic exchange of dollars for things stowed away in our closets? First, let's try to picture the textile ecosystem a little bit beyond circularity. Then we'll add in a splash of creativity, allowing for even a bit more of emergence, as they are both integral properties of a healthy ecosystem. And then let's emphasize the importance of the story of the whole thing. So let's start by breaking down this idea of a textile ecosystem. The majority of modern textile industries are linear. We know this. It's a take, make, waste business. It's a paradigm upheld by nearly all multinational corporations. This paradigm focuses on maximum extraction and only really benefiting one main player. The circular textile system seems to be a great answer in response to this. From the soil back to the soil, the key here is the nourishing of each component of the circular system. And there's a little, if you're unfamiliar with the soil to soil system, I think there's a little icon in your programs that you can reference. Healthy ecosystems are balanced ecosystems and involve all nodes interacting as a web. We know it just doesn't go like this, right? Overlapping so much that sometimes the amount of overlapping is incomprehensible. Thinking of a textile industry, not just as a circular soil to soil framework where we have the makers all in a row or even the producers all in a web, that is already a big paradigm shift and we're all there. We're thinking about it like that. Think of the implications of that. But what we can also do is really think of all of the parts that are representative of a healthy ecosystem. More life, more aliveness in all the parts. And then, believe me, you can totally get lost in the, well, what are all the parts then, right? The bigness of it all, or should I say the bigness of it all, or the smallness of it all, is infinite. That's how miraculous and magical and full of life ecosystems are. To see how these overlapping systems actually function in our community, let's take a single flax flower as an example. In the linear system, this flax flower that would eventually become linen, this flower would oddly be the beginning in the linear system. Where does it come from? Who cares? Starts with a flax flower, right? So we know that's a joke, but in a circular system, the soil in which this flower grows is both the beginning of the textile chain and the ending, and miraculously, the beginning of something new and different, and on we go. Emergent. For example, years ago, a bunch of us gathered at Emily's farm, Freynat Farm in Newbury. We gathered there for a natural dye workshop and capped off the time by composting a bunch of fans, Aaron's cut off scraps, into the soil from which Emily could grow a cute little flax flower, a field of flax flowers, I should say. That circular system makes sense, and we can easily see how the end of life of garment has a potential to nourish the next crop of fiber. Now, though, if we really think about overlapping ecosystems, it starts getting pretty wild. Because this flax flower that grew at Freynat Farm, and just one, if you can just picture one flower, it was a lot of things to a lot of beings throughout its life and even beyond its life. The amount of exchanges that simply happened with this one flower are innumerable. This flower was a landing pad, a food source, a habitat. It exchanged nutrients and sugars with the microbes living beneath its roots and was a touch point for mycelium. And that's a lot of biological functions right there for this little flax flower that someday, one day, will turn into linen if we can ever process all of the flax fiber that's in Sarah's barn.
And those are some of the ways that one flower enhances the aliveness of the beings around it. And here's where it becomes emergent and beautifully creative. All of the nodes in this ecosystem are sitting right here in this room as well. You are a node. All end up transforming each other from each exchange. And on the cellular level, on a microbiota level, as well as on the deeply felt level, on the relational level, relationship to self, relationship to others, as Robin Wall Kimmerer says, all flourishing is mutual. Whether it's the creek bed next to the dye house, or the person farming the indigo, or the person wearing the indigo underwear, or by extension, the partner of the person wearing the indigo underwear, we all transform together whether we like it or not. The ripples can't be withheld. You are different this minute than you were the second, half of a second, tenth of a second, than you were the last. We are all verbs changing every minute based on our biologic exchanges, as Melissa talked about this morning. We change each other. The person you're sitting next to right now is changing you, and you are changing them, whether you know them or not, which means we are all evolving with each other. And think about how your interactions with your materials can shape this. Our materials are everything. I mean, your garments are literally holding you right now, literally hugging you every second of the day, providing you with warmth and light all day long. This is your opportunity to really dig into that feeling and let it bring you life. This embracing of emergence, of the constant changing and evolution, is often what we think about when we are describing building a textile infrastructure to individuals as building the airplane in the sky. We can't exactly predict the future of a bioregional textile system. We actually don't know exactly what it's going to look like or who is going to be involved. But if those involved feel excited right now, enlivened by the endeavor, the paradigm flips from having to know how it gets to the exact point that was predicted by us, and instead embracing the emergence of it as part of the creative process. As with any creative process, you start doing the thing. You live into it in this moment, whether that is making something beautiful or shopping local or wearing that amazing thrifted find that you feel is like a super bold move because you're just unsure of it, but you really feel good in that garment. An enlivened process. All the people that were on this stage today just started doing the thing, okay? I'm sure all of them would tell you, and I think Jordan even mentioned it, that the path participating in this textile system could not have been predicted by him. It emerged. We could try to make predictions leading to a sense of control, and that never really works out for anyone. Or we could hold our visions openly. As this textile ecosystem will give back to you just like any other system, based on how deep your connections are to it. And as Andreas Weber, the author of Enlivenment, the book that inspired the title of this event, writes, the deeper the connections in the system, the more creative niches it will offer its individual members. So who knows what can happen? I mean, right? That was incredible. The creativity with Molly and Marky's Cranky Show. I was wondering what it was, and it blew my mind. You know, I wrote that line in here, but like I couldn't have imagined it any more creative and better. Some of the most powerful participation in this ecosystem is co-creative. It's saying yes to the collaborations that can turn into something else altogether, like So Valley in Cincinnati and Mitchell Wool from Michigan, their collaboration that resulted in scrap fabric that was just sitting around So Valley's place, eventually finding its purpose today, pinned to your chests, identifying each node of this ecosystem, only to be sewn back together at the end of this morning. Creativity is also our spirit. Like if you've ever been in a room with Courtney Harkin, we all just feel more livened by your presence. This enlivened work opens up channels to ancestors like Isaac Koblentz, who from Athens, who works with bast fiber. Did I cry last year too? I can't remember. I probably did. Like Isaac Koblenz, who works with bast fiber, recently, bast fiber, he recently found documents of his family lineage working with bast fiber. And the future generations, like what 4800 Broadway is doing with their felt loom, making a creative space for kids and adults to play. And we all transform by participation. And so, therefore, if we are actively participating in enlivened opportunities in creative collaborations, we will all shape each other in a nourishing way. It's the acknowledgement of it that we aren't just passively reacting to what is being put in front of us to consume, but that we are conscious about the life and energy and love and connection that goes into all of the incredible amount of parts of the whole that will have the power to transform. And our attention and understanding of it, the power that we hold in the understanding that is just a brush of a hand against a sheep's fleece, can create a moment of enlivened experience for you, changing your cellular structure, your connection to other dynamic living beings. So maybe you're one of the few here actively working on building those tangible parts of the infrastructure, the mills, the storefronts, but more than likely you're sitting here today with ample capacity to participate in the soft infrastructure that Sarah was mentioning, at least by the story of what you experience here today. The stories shape culture. Does anyone have a tissue? I'm doing this, and it's kind of, okay. The stories shape culture, and culture shapes leaders, which shapes, thank you. Oh, that's really kind. The stories shape cultures, and culture shapes leaders, which shape policies, which shape the systems. What's the news story of our culture? How can this news story be amplified for the artisans, the farmers, the dyers, the community members? What's the story that's unfolding for you this morning? What's the conversation that you can have tonight? By writing the new chapter, we are actively creating the new conditions for our own flourishing. We are coming upon a really interesting time in our nation's history. One of the only things that we can be sure has value is creativity and care of our community. So let's pull off the greatest comeback from where we once saw our culture headed, a pivot back to people, to living systems, to fulfillment, to full living, full aliveness. So when folks ask us, why textiles? And we say, because it teaches us about love, here's what we mean. Love shows up in every part of this ecosystem. It's in how a farmer knows each animal's personality, how a maker stays up late perfecting a design, how we choose to mend our favorite jeans instead of tossing them, how we gather like this in community to share what excites us. Love isn't just an emotion in this context. It is an active force that enlivens our entire textile ecosystem. It's what makes us care about the soil that grows our flax, the hands that spin our yarn, and communities, all of you who are wearing clothing from local makers. It transforms simple transactions, like transactions you might have in the afternoon, to meaningful relationships. And when we discover our textile culture as a vibrant love story, we create better textiles and become empowered to create better ways of being alive together. And that's the kind of cultural transformation that can change everything. So thank you for being a part of this love story that keeps unfolding in the most perfect ways we couldn't have ever imagined. Thank you.